As I stepped into the vast expanse of Yellowstone National Park, the air crackled with an energy I couldn't quite place. The towering pines swayed gently in the crisp wind, their whispers almost conspiratorial. I had been a forest ranger in my native region for years, but nothing prepared me for the sheer magnitude and mystique of Yellowstone. This wasn't just another stretch of wilderness, it was a realm steeped in legend, where every shadow seemed to hold secrets waiting to be uncovered. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the rugged terrain. I remember my first day vividly, the way the colors of the landscape seemed to shift as the light changed. The golden hues of the grasslands contrasted with the deep greens of the forests and the stark whites of the geysers. Yet, beneath its breathtaking beauty lay an undercurrent of something unsettling, a sensation that pricked at my instincts as a ranger. My colleagues had shared numerous tales, each more chilling than the last. They spoke of strange occurrences, the echoes of footsteps in the night when no one was there, flickering lights in the dense woods, and unsettling growls that resonated through the silence. I dismissed these stories as mere campfire tales, but as I settled into my cabin, a sense of foreboding settled around me like a thick fog. That first night, I patrolled the grounds, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The forest was alive with sounds, the rustling of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, and the soft crackle of twigs underfoot. But there was something else, a low hum that seemed to vibrate through the air. My heart raced, but I shook off the feeling. I was a seasoned ranger, after all. I was trained to handle whatever the wild threw my way. It was during these patrols that I encountered her, Elena, a fellow ranger with a sharp mind and an eye for detail. She was the kind of person who drew you in with her quiet confidence and unwavering determination. We quickly formed a bond, our shared passion for the forest overshadowing the tension that lingered in the air. As we exchanged stories about our experiences, I felt a sense of safety in her presence, as if together we could face whatever darkness lay ahead. But the forest had a way of unraveling even the strongest bonds. One evening, as we were wrapping up our shift, a piercing scream shattered the tranquility of the night. It echoed through the trees, sending a chill down my spine. We exchanged worried glances, adrenaline coursing through our veins. Without a second thought, we grabbed our gear and rushed toward the sound, our hearts pounding in sync. As we approached the source, the air grew colder, and the shadows deepened. "Do you hear that?" Elena whispered, her voice barely above a breath. I nodded, straining to listen. The scream had faded, replaced by an eerie silence that settled heavily around us. We moved cautiously, our flashlights illuminating the path ahead. Then we saw it, a figure darting between the trees, almost too quick to comprehend. My instincts kicked in, and I raised my flashlight, but the figure slipped away like smoke. "What was that?" I breathed, my heart racing. Elena shook her head, her eyes wide with disbelief. We searched for clues, but the forest seemed to swallow our questions whole. It's strange how the mind works in such situations. I was both terrified and exhilarated, caught in the grip of something inexplicable. We returned to the cabin, our thoughts racing, unable to shake the feeling that we had stumbled upon something far beyond our understanding. Days turned into weeks, and the strange occurrences began to pile up. I found myself questioning reality more often than not. Shadows danced just outside my peripheral vision, and the forest seemed to whisper secrets I could not decipher. I often caught Elena gazing into the distance, her expression lost in thought. It was as if the forest was weaving a spell around us, drawing us deeper into its mysteries. One night, as I lay in bed, sleep eluding me, I decided to step outside for some fresh air. The moon hung low, casting a silvery glow over the landscape. I took a deep breath, savoring the crispness of the night, but that sense of unease returned, stronger than ever. I heard a rustling nearby, and my heart began to race once more. I turned, expecting to see a deer or some other creature, but instead, I was met with silence. The trees loomed overhead, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands. Just then, I heard it again, a soft, almost melodic voice calling my name. "Mark, come closer." I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. The voice was soothing yet filled with an otherworldly quality that sent shivers down my spine. I felt drawn to it, an inexplicable urge to follow, to understand what lay beyond the darkness. But something held me back, a primal instinct warning me not to venture further into the unknown. I stood there, torn between curiosity and fear, the weight of the forest pressing down on me. It was in that moment that I realized the true nature of the challenge I faced. This was no ordinary park, and I was no ordinary ranger. I had been thrust into a realm where the line between reality and nightmare blurred, and the only way out was to confront the darkness head-on. As I made my way back inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that the forest was alive in a way I had never experienced before. What had I gotten myself into? What secrets lay hidden within the heart of Yellowstone? This was only the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything I thought I knew about fear, survival, and the very fabric of reality itself. Yellowstone National Park had a reputation that went beyond its breathtaking landscapes and geothermal wonders. It was a place of contradictions, a sanctuary teeming with life and yet steeped in a history of inexplicable events. As I delved deeper into my new role as a forest ranger, I began to peel back the layers of this enigmatic wilderness. The park itself was a tapestry of vibrant ecosystems, each woven together by the threads of nature. From the bubbling hot springs that released sulfurous clouds into the crisp air to the serene meadows dotted with wildflowers, every inch seemed alive with stories waiting to be told. Yet, as I patrolled these grounds, I couldn't shake the feeling that there were darker tales lurking beneath the surface, a truth obscured by the beauty surrounding me. Elena was my anchor in this chaotic world. Her spirit was as fierce as the storms that rolled through the mountains, yet she possessed a calm demeanor that put others at ease. I admired her dedication and the way she moved through the forest with an almost instinctual grace. It was evident she had a deep connection to the land, one that transcended the typical ranger duties. She often spoke of her childhood spent in the woods, of nights spent camping under a blanket of stars, listening to the sounds of the wilderness. "I used to think the forest was a friend," she confided one evening as we sat by the fire, the flames casting flickering shadows on our faces. "But now, I wonder if it has its own agenda." Her words hung in the air, and I could sense the weight of her thoughts. She had witnessed things, strange occurrences that had chipped away at her unwavering belief in the natural order. Her stories were filled with encounters that felt like whispers from another realm, echoes of something ancient and powerful. I leaned in closer, captivated by her recounting of a night when she and a group of rangers had stumbled upon a circle of stones deep in the forest, each one etched with symbols that seemed to pulse with energy. "It felt like we were intruding on a sacred space," she said, her eyes reflecting the flames. "And then we heard it, the voice of the forest calling out to us. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time." Elena's tales ignited a spark of curiosity within me. I was no stranger to the supernatural. I had heard my fair share of legends about the area. The Native American tribes that once roamed these lands spoke of spirits that protected the forest, guardians that would not take kindly to those who disrespected their domain. But hearing it from Elena brought a new dimension to these stories, a sense of urgency that I couldn't ignore. As my shifts continued, I found myself more attuned to the oddities around me. I noticed that certain areas of the park felt different, as if time itself had slowed down. The trees seemed to whisper secrets, and shadows danced just beyond the reach of my flashlight. I would often catch glimpses of movement from the corner of my eye, but when I turned, nothing would be there. It was unsettling, yet exhilarating, pushing me to confront my fears head-on. One particularly eerie evening, I decided to venture into the woods alone, driven by an insatiable need to understand the mystery that enveloped me. The moon hung high in the sky, casting an ethereal glow over the landscape. I followed a narrow trail, my flashlight illuminating the path ahead. The further I went, the thicker the trees became, their branches intertwining like skeletal fingers reaching for the stars. Suddenly, I stumbled upon a clearing, and what I saw took my breath away. In the center stood an ancient tree, its gnarled roots twisting through the earth like the veins of the forest. It was enormous, its bark rugged and weathered, and I felt an inexplicable draw toward it. As I approached, I could see carvings etched into the trunk, symbols resembling those Elena had described, pulsating faintly in the moonlight. Just then, I heard a rustling behind me. I turned sharply, heart racing, but found nothing. The forest was silent, save for the soft rustle of leaves. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the creeping sensation of unease. Suddenly, a low growl resonated through the air, primal and chilling. My instincts kicked in, and I turned to face whatever had intruded on my solitude. And there it was, a large figure lurking in the shadows, its eyes gleaming like embers in the dark. It stood still, watching me with an intensity that sent a jolt of fear through my veins. I raised my flashlight, but as the beam fell upon it, the creature melted away into the darkness, leaving behind only the echo of its presence. Back at the cabin, I couldn't shake the image from my mind. What had I encountered? Was it a trick of the light, or was the forest indeed alive with forces beyond my comprehension? I knew I had to share my experience with Elena. Her insights might help unravel the mystery, but I also feared what it might mean for our understanding of the park and its hidden depths. As days turned into nights and the strange occurrences continued, I felt a growing bond with Elena. We were kindred spirits navigating the darkness together, finding solace in shared experiences. Yet, beneath our camaraderie lay an undercurrent of tension, an acknowledgement that we were both playing a dangerous game with the unknown. The forest had awakened something within me, a hunger for truth that could not be satiated. I realized that in order to survive this wild, unpredictable land, I needed to confront not just the shadows of the woods, but my own fears as well. And as I prepared to face whatever lay ahead, I understood that the true challenge was not just the forest itself, but the secrets it held and the darkness that loomed beyond the veil of reality. Days turned into weeks, and each passing moment in Yellowstone felt like a brush with the inexplicable. The air grew heavy with unspoken tension as the wilderness seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Elena and I continued our nightly patrols, but the eerie happenings became more frequent, each encounter leaving us more unsettled than the last. One night, as we traversed the rugged terrain, I felt an acute awareness of the forest around us, as though it was holding its breath. The moon was obscured by thick clouds, and the darkness wrapped around us like a shroud. We approached a familiar trail, its path wound with roots and stones, but tonight it felt different, almost hostile. I glanced at Elena, whose expression mirrored my own unease. "Do you feel that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It's like the forest is watching us." We walked in silence, the air thick with anticipation. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the trees, startling us both. We froze, hearts pounding in unison. I turned my flashlight toward the sound, illuminating a cluster of bushes that rustled ominously. "What was that?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Let's check it out," Elena replied, her courage shining through her apprehension. We crept closer, the beam of light revealing nothing but darkness and shadows. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, a creature leaped from the underbrush, a deer, startled by our presence. It bounded away, disappearing into the depths of the forest, but the encounter left us rattled. "Just a deer," I said, attempting to mask my own fear. Yet, the unease lingered, gnawing at the edges of my mind. As we continued our patrol, I couldn't shake the feeling of being pursued. The forest felt alive, as if something ancient and powerful lurked just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. That night, sleep eluded me. I tossed and turned, every creak of the cabin sending waves of anxiety coursing through my veins. The following day, I decided to investigate the strange symbols I had found carved into the ancient tree. I needed answers. With a determined spirit, I hiked back to the clearing, retracing my steps with the hope of finding some clue to the mystery that enveloped us. As I arrived, the sun hung high in the sky, casting a golden glow over the clearing. The tree stood majestic, its presence both comforting and intimidating. I examined the carvings closely, tracing my fingers over the intricate designs. Each symbol seemed to pulse with an energy that resonated deep within me. Suddenly, a rustling sound interrupted my concentration. I turned to see Elena approaching, her face pale. "I had a dream about this place," she said, her voice trembling. "It felt so real. I saw the forest alive, but it was angry." Her words sent a shiver down my spine. "What do you mean?" I asked, desperate for clarity. It was as if the trees were screaming for help, their branches twisted and reaching out. And then there were figures, shadowy beings moving through the underbrush, she explained, her eyes wide with fear. The weight of her dream settled over us like a fog. I felt an instinctual pull to protect her, to shield her from whatever darkness was encroaching upon us. "We need to be careful," I urged. "Whatever is happening here, it's not normal." As we stood together, the air around us shifted, and I could sense a presence lurking just beyond our sight. The forest, which had once felt like a sanctuary, now felt like a trap. It was a realization that struck me with the force of a thunderclap. We were not alone. That night, we decided to stay vigilant. We set up a small campfire outside our cabin, its flickering flames casting long shadows that danced across the ground. The warmth provided some comfort, but the oppressive sense of watchfulness remained. "Elena, have you ever heard of the legends surrounding this place?" I asked, breaking the silence. She nodded slowly. "I've heard whispers. Stories about the spirits of the forest, the guardians who protect it from those who disrespect the land. What if the disturbances we've been feeling are a result of something we unknowingly did? I pondered aloud, recalling our earlier patrols and the potential disturbances we might have caused. Elena's expression turned grave. What if we've angered them? What if they want us to leave? As if in response to her words, the wind picked up, rustling the trees and sending a chill down my spine. I glanced around, suddenly aware of the shadows that seemed to stretch and twist before our eyes. It felt as though the forest was alive, breathing, and watching. Our conversation was interrupted by the sudden sound of footsteps approaching from the dense woods. We both froze, hearts racing. The sound grew closer, accompanied by an unsettling low growl. My flashlight flickered, casting erratic beams of light into the darkness. "Elena, stay behind me," I instructed, stepping forward, my heart pounding in my chest. The growl intensified, vibrating through the air. I shined my light in the direction of the sound, revealing nothing but darkness. Then, without warning, a figure emerged from the shadows, a tall, hulking shape with glowing eyes that pierced through the night. My breath caught in my throat as the creature stepped forward, its form shifting and undulating like smoke. It was both majestic and terrifying, as if it had been conjured from the very essence of the forest. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice trembling with fear. The creature paused, its gaze fixed upon us, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. It was as if the forest itself held its breath, waiting for our response. And then, just as quickly as it appeared, the creature vanished into the shadows, leaving us standing in stunned silence. "What was that?" Elena gasped, her face pale. "I don't know," I admitted, shaking. "But whatever it is, it's not pleased with us." That night, sleep was impossible. I lay wide awake, the memory of the creature seared into my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that we had crossed a threshold, awakening something ancient and powerful. The forest was no longer just a backdrop, it was a living entity, and we were at its mercy. The next morning, we decided to return to the ancient tree. We needed to decipher the symbols and understand the true nature of the force we were dealing with. As we arrived, the clearing felt different, darker, charged with an energy that made my skin crawl. "Do you think we're safe here?" Elena whispered, glancing over her shoulder. "I don't know," I replied, feeling a knot of dread tighten in my stomach. "But we have to find answers." We spent hours examining the carvings, piecing together fragments of a story that seemed to unravel with each passing moment. The symbols spoke of a balance between nature and humanity, and a warning against those who would disrupt that harmony. "Look at this," Elena said, pointing at a series of symbols that depicted a figure standing between two forces, one light and one dark. "It's as if it's telling us that we're caught in the middle." Her insight struck a chord within me. We were not just observers, we were participants in a struggle that transcended our understanding. As I traced the symbols with my fingers, a sense of urgency washed over me. We had to act before it was too late. But the forest had other plans. Just as we made our decision to return to the cabin, a sudden gust of wind swept through the clearing, uprooting leaves and branches in a chaotic whirlwind. I grabbed Elena's hand, pulling her close as we stumbled back, our hearts racing. "Run!" I shouted, and we took off through the trees, the forest closing in around us. The growls echoed in the distance, a haunting reminder that we were not alone. And as we fled, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being hunted. The conflict had escalated, and the stakes were higher than ever. The forest was alive with a primal force, and we were caught in its web. With every step, I could feel the tension building, a storm brewing just beyond the horizon. We had awakened something in Yellowstone, and now it was time to confront the darkness that loomed ahead. As our harrowing encounters in Yellowstone unfolded, it became clear that the conflict we faced was layered with complexities that intertwined our fates with the very essence of the forest. Each night, as we returned to the cabin, the shadows cast by the flickering firelight seemed to deepen, revealing hidden truths and unspoken fears. With each patrol, I began to notice that our experiences were not isolated incidents. Other rangers had begun to share their own unsettling stories, each adding a thread to the intricate tapestry of mystery that enveloped the park. It was during one of these gatherings that we learned about a ranger who had gone missing months ago. His name was Tom, and he had been known for his deep respect for the land. "Elena, do you think there's a connection?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper as we stood outside the cabin, the cold night air wrapping around us like a shroud. She nodded, her expression grave. "Tom believed in the old legends. He often spoke about the spirits of the forest and their need for balance. I always thought he was just being dramatic. It sounds like he might have known something we didn't, I replied, feeling a knot of dread tighten in my stomach. The idea that Tom's disappearance might be linked to the disturbances in the park sent chills down my spine. Determined to uncover the truth, we began to delve deeper into Tom's last known whereabouts. We discovered that he had been investigating a series of strange occurrences near a secluded part of the park called the Whispering Pines. Rumors suggested that the area was haunted, a place where the veil between our world and the supernatural thinned. As we prepared to venture to this ominous location, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were stepping into a trap. In the brief moments of calm, I found myself reflecting on the complexities of our situation. It wasn't just the forest that posed a threat, it was the very nature of our existence within it. The delicate balance we had always taken for granted now felt precarious, as if the forest itself was judging our every move. Elena and I set out early the next morning, the sun barely rising above the horizon, casting a golden glow that seemed to offer a fleeting sense of hope. The path to Whispering Pines was narrow and winding, bordered by towering trees that loomed like sentinels. As we walked, I couldn't help but feel the weight of the legends bearing down upon us. "Do you think we're trespassing?" I asked, breaking the silence. "What if we're not meant to be here?" Elena paused, her brow furrowed in thought. "Maybe that's the point. We need to confront whatever is lurking here, to understand what happened to Tom. We owe it to him." Her resolve inspired me, and we continued down the path, our senses heightened with every step. As we approached Whispering Pines, an eerie stillness enveloped us. The sounds of the forest seemed to fade away, replaced by an unsettling quiet that felt almost unnatural. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught my eye, an apparition darting between the trees. My heart raced as I pointed it out to Elena. "Did you see that?" I gasped. She nodded, her expression a mix of fear and determination. "We need to follow it." We moved cautiously, driven by a mixture of curiosity and dread. The deeper we ventured into the woods, the more the atmosphere shifted. Shadows twisted and elongated, and the air grew thicker, almost suffocating. Then, as if sensing our presence, the forest came alive with an unsettling energy. The apparition materialized before us, a figure cloaked in a flowing garment, its features obscured by a veil of mist. It hovered just beyond our reach, beckoning us closer. "You should not be here," it whispered, its voice a haunting melody that echoed through the trees. "Who are you?" I called out, feeling a mixture of fear and awe. "What do you want from us?" The figure remained silent for a moment, then spoke again, its tone laced with sorrow. "You awaken the balance that has long been forgotten." The words resonated within me, igniting a flicker of understanding. "The legends, the spirits of the forest," I murmured, piecing together the fragments of what I had learned. "They demand respect, don't they?" The figure's presence intensified, and I could feel the weight of its gaze upon us. "To restore the balance, you must confront the darkness that lies within." With those words, the apparition vanished, leaving us standing in the stillness of the forest, our hearts racing. A sense of urgency washed over me, and I turned to Elena, her eyes wide with realization. "We need to find out what happened to Tom. He must have known something about this darkness." Our resolve strengthened. We made our way back to the park headquarters, determined to uncover the truth. The deeper we probed into Tom's disappearance, the more we unearthed unsettling connections. Accounts of other rangers who had vanished without a trace, each linked to areas of the park known for their supernatural occurrences. It became apparent that the forest had a history, a narrative filled with loss and longing that echoed through the ages. The whispers of the past intertwined with our present, creating a complex web that ensnared us. As we pieced together the stories, I realized that fear alone couldn't guide us. We needed to embrace the complexities of our situation, the interwoven tales of those who had walked these paths before us. Each ranger who had come before us had left behind a legacy, a warning that spoke to the need for respect and understanding within the wilderness. Yet, the darkness that lingered in the shadows was not merely a physical threat. It was a manifestation of our own fears and doubts. The forest challenged us to confront not only the external forces at play, but also the internal conflicts that had shaped our lives. As we prepared for our next steps, I felt a surge of determination mingled with trepidation. We were not just rangers, we were guardians of the stories that had been forgotten. The complexities of the forest mirrored our own struggles, and it was time to confront the darkness that had taken root within us and the land. With newfound purpose, We set out to unravel the layers of mystery that bound us to Yellowstone, knowing that the path ahead would test our resolve and challenge the very essence of who we were. The days following our chilling encounter at Whispering Pines were a whirlwind of emotions: fear, determination, and an overwhelming sense of urgency. The forest felt different, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for us to take the next step. Elena and I dove headfirst into our investigation, poring over old ranger reports, local legends, and any scrap of information we could find about the disappearances that had haunted Yellowstone. One evening, as we sat in the park's small library, our eyes scanned the faded pages of a weathered journal belonging to a ranger who had worked in Yellowstone decades earlier. The words were a testament to the deep connection many had felt with the land, but they also hinted at a darker undercurrent, a warning about the consequences of disturbing the natural order. "Look at this," I said, pointing to a passage that spoke of a ritual once performed by the indigenous tribes to honor the spirits of the forest. It says they believed that the spirits would protect the land as long as they were respected. Elena leaned closer, her brow furrowed in thought. "But what happens when they're forgotten? It sounds like something has stirred in the woods." The weight of her words hung in the air, a palpable tension that resonated with our experiences. Just then, a sense of urgency washed over me. I knew we needed to return to Whispering Pines, to confront whatever darkness lingered there. I felt an inexplicable pull, an obligation to the land and to the rangers who had come before us. "Let's go back," I suggested, my voice steady with resolve. "We need to find out what happened to Tom and the others. We can't let their stories fade into oblivion." Elena nodded, her determination mirroring my own. As night fell, we prepared for our journey, gathering flashlights and supplies. The moon hung high in the sky, illuminating the path ahead as we set off toward the woods, our hearts pounding with anticipation. When we arrived at Whispering Pines, the atmosphere was thick with an almost tangible energy. The trees loomed overhead, their branches creating a canopy that filtered the moonlight into a soft glow. As we stepped deeper into the woods, I could feel the weight of history pressing down on us, as if the very ground beneath our feet was alive with the stories of those who had walked before. "Do you hear that?" Elena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I strained my ears, and there it was, a low, rhythmic thumping sound that seemed to echo through the trees. It was almost like a heartbeat, a pulse that resonated with the very essence of the forest. We exchanged glances, a mix of excitement and apprehension coursing through us. "Let's follow it," I suggested, adrenaline shooting through my veins. The sound grew louder as we moved, drawing us deeper into the heart of the woods. The path twisted and turned, and soon we found ourselves in a small clearing surrounded by towering pines. In the center stood a circle of stones, weathered and worn, their surfaces etched with symbols that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. "This must be it," Elena breathed, awe and trepidation mingling in her voice. "The place where the rituals were performed." I stepped closer, the air heavy with anticipation. The thumping continued, resonating with a rhythm that felt both ancient and alive. I reached out to touch one of the stones, and as my fingers made contact, the sound intensified, reverberating through my body like a warning signal. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the clearing, extinguishing our flashlights and plunging us into darkness. Panic surged within me, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Elena, stay close," I said, my voice steady despite the fear gripping my heart. Just then, the ground beneath us began to tremble, and the stones glowed with an otherworldly light. Shadows danced around us, swirling and morphing into indistinct shapes. The heartbeat grew louder, a cacophony that reverberated through the forest, almost drowning out my thoughts. "Tom!" I called out, my voice echoing into the abyss, praying for a response. "Is that you?" The shadows coalesced, and for a brief moment I saw him, a figure bathed in the ethereal light, his expression a mixture of sorrow and urgency. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice barely a whisper, the wind carrying it away before I could fully process his words. "What happened to you?" I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. "What are we supposed to do?" He extended a hand, his eyes pleading. "Restore the balance. You must remember, honor the spirits." In an instant, the vision faded, replaced by swirling darkness that threatened to engulf us. I felt Elena's hand gripping mine tightly as we stood frozen in fear. The heartbeat intensified, now a chaotic rhythm that felt like a warning, urging us to flee. "We need to leave now," I shouted, pulling Elena away from the stones. The shadows writhed around us, and the air crackled with energy. as if the forest itself was alive and aware of our presence. We tore through the underbrush, branches clawing at our clothes as we ran, guided only by the faint glimmer of moonlight ahead. The thumping sound faded into the distance, replaced by the eerie stillness of the forest. I could feel the weight of the darkness behind us, like a predator stalking its prey. Just as we reached the edge of the clearing, a blinding flash illuminated the woods, and for a brief moment, I turned to look back. The stones pulsed with light, the shadows swirling and twisting as if in a desperate attempt to keep us from escaping. "Kiproning!" Elena yelled, her voice breaking through the terror that surrounded me. We stumbled into the safety of the trees, our hearts racing as we navigated the familiar trails leading back to our cabin. As we finally reached the cabin, breathless and shaken, the realization of what we had experienced began to settle in. The forest had spoken to us, revealing its depths and complexities, but it had also warned us of the consequences of disturbing the balance that had existed for centuries. "We have to tell the others," I said, my voice steadying as the adrenaline began to fade. "We need to honor Tom and the spirits of this land." Elena nodded, her expression resolute. "We can't let fear dictate our actions. We must remember what we learned tonight." In that moment, I knew that our journey was far from over. We had been thrust into a narrative that was bigger than ourselves, a story woven into the very fabric of Yellowstone. The darkness we had encountered was both a challenge and a call to arms, urging us to protect the legacy of those who had come before us. As we stood in the glow of the cabin's light, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We were not just rangers, we were guardians of the forest's history, tasked with a mission to restore the balance and honor the spirits that dwelled within. The days following our harrowing experience at Whispering Pines felt like a surreal blur. Elena and I grappled with the weight of what we had witnessed, the vision of Tom, the pulsating stones, and the primal energy that had surged through the forest. It was a revelation that had shaken us to our core, and as we shared our story with our fellow rangers, we were met with a mixture of skepticism and concern. Gathered around the fire in the common area of the ranger station, we recounted our encounter, our voices barely above a whisper. "The stones, they were alive," I said, my heart racing as I relived the moment. "Tom warned us. We need to honor the spirits of this land." Some of the rangers exchanged skeptical glances, their expressions a mix of disbelief and unease. "You two were probably just spooked by the dark," one ranger, Jake, scoffed. "It's easy to let your imagination run wild out there." Elena shot him a sharp look. "You weren't there, Jake. It wasn't just our imaginations. We felt something powerful and ancient." Another ranger, Sarah, who had worked in Yellowstone for years, leaned forward, her brow furrowed in thought. "I've heard stories about those stones," she admitted. "They say they were part of old rituals, a way to communicate with the spirits of the forest. But it's just folklore, right?" "Is it?" I challenged, feeling a surge of frustration. "What if there's truth to it? What if Tom's disappearance is connected to whatever has awakened in the woods? We can't disregard this." The conversation shifted, the atmosphere thick with tension as the rangers debated the validity of our claims. Some were intrigued, while others remained skeptical, clinging to their rational explanations. As the flames flickered and crackled, I felt a sense of isolation creeping in. It was as if we stood on the precipice of understanding a profound truth, yet the others were unwilling to take the leap with us. After the meeting, Elena and I retreated to our cabin, the weight of the world pressing down on our shoulders. What if they're right? I wondered aloud, my voice heavy with doubt. What if we're just imagining things? Elena shook her head, her determination unwavering. "No, we felt it. We experienced something real. We can't ignore it. If we don't act, who will?" Her words reignited the fire within me. We had a responsibility, not just to ourselves, but to the history and spirit of the land. The following morning, we decided to return to Whispering Pines, armed with knowledge and a plan to honor the spirits that had reached out to us. As we approached the clearing again, the air felt charged, crackling with energy. The sun shone brightly, illuminating the stones in a golden hue. I felt both anxious and exhilarated, caught between the weight of our mission and the fear of what might happen next. "We need to create an offering," Elena suggested, her eyes scanning the area for natural elements that could symbolize our respect for the forest. We gathered wildflowers, pine cones, and feathers, each item representing a connection to the land. As we arranged our offering in the center of the stone circle, I felt a sense of reverence wash over me. This was more than just a gesture. It was a promise to honor the spirits and restore balance. I closed my eyes, focusing on the energy around us, and whispered a silent prayer for guidance and protection. Just then, a gust of wind swept through the clearing, rustling the leaves and sending a chill down my spine. I opened my eyes, and to my astonishment, the stones began to shimmer with a soft light. My heart raced as I looked at Elena, who stood frozen in awe beside me. "Do you see that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," she breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. The light pulsed rhythmically, matching the heartbeat we had heard before. It felt as though the forest was responding to our offering, acknowledging our attempt to reconnect. In that moment, I realized the significance of our actions. We were not just rangers. We were conduits between the past and the present, tasked with bridging the gap between the natural world and the spirits that inhabited it. As the light began to fade, a sense of calm enveloped the clearing. The air felt lighter, and the oppressive weight that had lingered for weeks seemed to lift. I glanced at Elena, and we both shared a knowing smile, an unspoken acknowledgement that we had taken a step toward healing. However, our actions did not go unnoticed. In the days that followed, strange occurrences began to unfold around the park. Some rangers reported seeing fleeting shadows in the corners of their vision, while others heard whispers carried on the wind. The atmosphere grew thick with a sense of anticipation, as if the forest was alive with stories yearning to be heard. While some rangers dismissed these experiences as mere coincidences, others began to take notice of the changes in the environment. Animals appeared more curious, their behaviors shifting in ways that were difficult to explain. Even the weather seemed to fluctuate, with sudden storms and unexpected calmness that left us all on edge. Amidst the growing tension, I felt a sense of urgency to share our experience with the public. "We need to organize a gathering," I suggested to Elena one evening, as we sat on the cabin porch watching the stars twinkle overhead. "We should invite the locals, share our story, and what we've learned about respecting the land." She nodded, her enthusiasm palpable. "It's time we spread awareness about the spiritual aspects of this place. Maybe if we educate others, we can foster a deeper connection to the land." With renewed purpose, we reached out to local communities, inviting them to join us for a gathering in the park. We planned to share our experiences, encourage discussions about the importance of honoring the spirits of the land, and promote conservation efforts aimed at preserving the delicate balance of nature. As the day of the gathering approached, excitement and anxiety coursed through me. Would the locals embrace our message, or would they dismiss it as mere superstition? The thought of sharing our story filled me with both hope and trepidation. When the day finally arrived, the clearing at Whispering Pines was filled with people, families, fellow rangers, and curious locals eager to hear what we had to say. As I stood before the crowd, I felt a wave of nerves wash over me, but Elena's reassuring presence beside me steadied my resolve. "Thank you all for being here," I began, my voice carrying over the murmurs of the crowd. "We're here to share not just our experiences, but to honor the land we all love. Yellowstone is more than just a national park. It's a living, breathing entity with a spirit that deserves our respect." As I spoke, I noticed the crowd's expressions shift from skepticism to curiosity. I shared our encounter at the stones, the vision of Tom, and the importance of honoring the balance of nature. The stories resonated with many, igniting conversations about their own experiences in the park. Afterwards, the atmosphere was electric, filled with a sense of camaraderie and shared purpose. People exchanged stories of their encounters with the wild, moments of awe and fear, of beauty and terror. It became clear that our experiences were not isolated. They were part of a larger narrative that connected us all. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the clearing, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the community that had gathered. Together, we were forging a new path, a path that honored the spirits of Yellowstone and sought to protect the delicate balance of the land for generations to come. In that moment, I understood the true consequences of our actions. We had awakened something profound, not just within ourselves, but within the very heart of the forest. It was a reminder that the stories of the land, the spirits that dwelled within it, and the people who cared for it were all intertwined in a tapestry of life that transcended time. The gathering at Whispering Pines marked a turning point not only for the community, but for Elena and me as well. In the days that followed, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The connections we forged with the locals deepened our understanding of the land and the spirits that inhabited it. Conversations flowed, and stories were exchanged, weaving a rich tapestry of shared experiences that transcended generations. As the weeks turned into months, We continued our work as rangers, but our perspective had irrevocably changed. We were no longer just guardians of the land. We had become ambassadors of its spirit. Each patrol felt different, infused with a sense of reverence and responsibility. We approached our duties with a newfound awareness, recognizing that our actions had consequences that extended far beyond the immediate environment. One crisp autumn morning, as we set out on a routine patrol, I noticed the leaves had begun to change, painting the landscape in hues of red and gold. It was breathtaking, a reminder of the cycles of nature that we often took for granted. As we walked along the trail, Elena and I discussed the significance of what we had learned from the community. "People seem more engaged now," Elena said, her voice vibrant with enthusiasm. "It's like they're starting to see Yellowstone not just as a park, but as a living entity." I nodded, reflecting on the shifts we had witnessed. Visitors were more respectful, taking the time to appreciate the beauty around them and learning about the cultural heritage of the land. Many had shared their own stories, and I could feel a collective desire to protect this precious environment. However, not all changes were positive. As winter approached, we faced challenges that tested our resolve. The park was experiencing an influx of visitors drawn by the allure of Yellowstone's winter wonderland, but with it came the potential for greater environmental strain. Litter was beginning to accumulate in popular areas, and some visitors displayed a blatant disregard for the park's regulations. One particularly frigid day, as we hiked to a popular overlook, I was disheartened to see trash strewn across the ground. Bottles, wrappers, and discarded gear littered the once pristine landscape. "This is unacceptable," I said, my frustration boiling over. "We need to do something." Elena agreed. "We can't just stand by and watch this happen. Let's organize a cleanup event. We can invite the community again and get everyone involved." With renewed determination, we set to work organizing a cleanup day. We reached out to local schools, environmental groups, and community organizations, rallying support for our cause. The response was overwhelmingly positive, and soon, plans were in motion for a day dedicated to restoring the park's beauty. On the day of the cleanup, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow over the landscape. As I arrived at the designated meeting spot, I was heartened to see a diverse group of people gathered, families, students, and fellow rangers, all ready to roll up their sleeves and make a difference. Elena and I divided the volunteers into teams, each assigned to different sections of the park. As we worked side by side, I felt a sense of camaraderie grow among us. Laughter echoed through the trees as we shared stories and experiences, united by a common goal. While picking up trash along a trail, I struck up a conversation with a young boy named Liam and his father. "Why do you love this park so much?" Liam asked, his eyes wide with curiosity. "It's a place where nature thrives," I replied, holding up a discarded bottle. "But it's our job to take care of it. If we don't, we risk losing its beauty." His father nodded, glancing at his son. "It's important to teach kids about respecting nature. They'll be the ones caring for it in the future." As we continued our cleanup, I was struck by the realization that we were not just preserving the park for ourselves, but for future generations. The next generation would carry forward the lessons we had learned, the importance of connection, respect, and stewardship. By the end of the day, the park sparkled anew, free from the litter that had threatened its beauty. We gathered together, exhausted yet exhilarated, to celebrate our accomplishments. As I looked around at the smiling faces, I felt a profound sense of pride in what we had achieved. Elena stepped forward, her voice ringing with enthusiasm. "Today, we didn't just clean up the park. We came together as a community, united by our love for this land. Let's keep this momentum going and continue to educate others about the importance of protecting what we have." Her words resonated deeply within me. We had not only overcome the challenges we faced, but had grown as individuals and as a community. The experiences we shared had fortified our commitment to the land and to one another. In the weeks that followed, we continued to engage with the community, hosting workshops on conservation, wildlife protection, and the cultural heritage of Yellowstone. People began to see the park through a different lens, recognizing it as a sanctuary deserving of care and respect. It was a shift that filled me with hope. As winter settled in, bringing with it a blanket of snow that transformed the landscape into a serene wonderland, I found solace in the stillness. The park took on a new beauty, its secrets hidden beneath the snow, waiting for spring to unveil them once more. One evening, as I stood on a hill overlooking a frozen lake, I reflected on how far we had come. The challenges we faced had not only tested our resolve, but had forged a bond between Elena, myself, and the community. We had become stewards of the land, united in our mission to protect and honor the spirits that resided within it. I turned to Elena, who stood beside me, her breath visible in the cold air. "Can you believe how much has changed?" I asked, my voice filled with wonder. "It's incredible," she replied, a smile spreading across her face. "We've turned our fear into action. We've honored Tom's memory and those who came before us." In that moment, I realized that our journey was far from over. The spirits of the forest had awakened something within us, a call to continue our work, to share our experiences, and to inspire others to connect with the land. As we walked back toward the cabin, I felt a sense of purpose guiding my steps. Together, we would continue to weave our stories into the fabric of Yellowstone, ensuring that its beauty and spirit would endure for generations to come. As winter deepened in Yellowstone, the landscape transformed into a hauntingly beautiful realm of white. The biting cold air was invigorating, but beneath the surface, a tension brewed, an anticipation that felt almost palpable. Elena and I remained vigilant, our commitment to the park and its spirits unwavering. We had seen the power of community in our cleanup efforts, but now we sensed that the time had come for a more profound confrontation with the mysteries that enveloped this wilderness. Weeks passed, filled with workshops and community gatherings, yet the whispers of the forest grew louder in my mind. Every night, I dreamt of the stones at Whispering Pines, their energy drawing me back. I felt a strong pull to return, to seek answers that had eluded us. It was as if the very essence of the park was beckoning us to fulfill a promise we had made, to honor its spirits and confront the darkness that lingered. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a fiery glow across the snow-covered landscape, I approached Elena. "I think we need to go back to Whispering Pines," I said, my voice steady but charged with urgency. "There's something we still need to understand." She looked thoughtful, her gaze drifting toward the darkening woods. "I've been feeling the same way. If we're going to face whatever is out there, we need to prepare ourselves. We can't go in unarmed, not this time." We set to work gathering supplies, flashlights, extra batteries, first aid kits, and warm clothing. But more importantly, we sought knowledge and wisdom from the community and the elders who had shared their stories with us. It became clear that we needed to approach the stones with respect, acknowledging the spirits that resided there. In the days leading up to our expedition, we consulted local historians and tribal elders, listening intently to their teachings. They spoke of rituals that involved offerings, gifts to appease the spirits and seek their guidance. Armed with this knowledge, we decided to create a small altar at the site, a gesture of our respect and willingness to engage with the unknown. The night before our journey, I felt a mixture of excitement and dread. The air was thick with anticipation, and I could sense the weight of the forest pressing in around us. As I lay in bed, I thought about Tom and the other rangers who had come before us. Their stories were woven into the very fabric of Yellowstone, and it was our duty to carry their legacy forward. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the sun casting a brilliant sheen over the snow. As we made our way to Whispering Pines, the world felt eerily still, the only sounds being the crunch of our boots on the snow and the distant call of a raven. Each step intensified my resolve. I was determined to confront the spirits that had haunted us and to uncover the truth behind the mysteries that surrounded Tom's disappearance. When we arrived at the clearing, I felt a shiver run down my spine. The stones stood tall and imposing, their surfaces glistening in the sunlight. They seemed to hum with energy, vibrating with a life force that was both invigorating and terrifying. Elena and I exchanged a glance, the unspoken understanding between us solidifying our determination. We began to set up our altar, arranging offerings of wildflowers, pine cones, and hand-carved wooden tokens, a representation of our respect for the land and its spirits. As we worked, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The trees loomed over us, their branches swaying gently, as if whispering secrets to one another. Once we finished, Elena lit a small candle and placed it at the center of our altar. "Let's take a moment to reflect and invite the spirits to join us," she said softly. We stood in silence, the air thick with anticipation. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the clearing, extinguishing our candle and sending a shiver down my spine. The temperature dropped, and I felt a chill that went beyond the cold. I exchanged a concerned glance with Elena. She could feel it too. The atmosphere was charged, the forest alive with an energy that was both exhilarating and foreboding. Maybe we should. I began, but before I could finish, the ground beneath us trembled slightly. We both stumbled, our hearts racing. What was that? Elena gasped, her face pale. I don't know, but it feels like something is awakening, I replied, my pulse quickening. We stood silently, absorbing the tension in the air. The tranquility of the forest had shifted, replaced by a sense of urgency. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on us, the realization that we were on the precipice of something monumental. We need to be ready for whatever happens next, I said, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. Let's prepare ourselves mentally and emotionally. Whatever is out there, we have to face it together. Elena nodded, determination blazing in her eyes. We spent the next hour honing our focus, breathing deeply and grounding ourselves in the present moment. We shared our fears and hopes, finding strength in our connection and commitment to one another. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the clearing, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. We were ready to confront the unknown, ready to honor the spirits of the forest, and ready to uncover the truth behind Tom's disappearance. In that moment of unity, I felt empowered, as if the very essence of the forest was channeling through us. As darkness descended, we stood before the stones, a sense of unbreakable resolve coursing through us. Whatever awaited us in the depths of the forest, we would face it together, fortified by the knowledge we had gained and the respect we had shown. With our hearts pounding and the forest alive around us, we stepped forward, ready to embrace the climax of our journey. A journey that would test our courage, resilience, and unwavering connection to the spirits of Yellowstone. The darkness enveloped us as we stood before the ancient stones of whispering pines, their surfaces glinting under the pale moonlight. The air was electric, charged with an energy that pulsated through the ground and into our very bones. I could feel the weight of the forest pressing in on us, urging us to confront the shadows that lingered at the edges of our understanding. Elena and I exchanged a determined glance, our unspoken agreement fortifying our resolve. We took a deep breath, centering ourselves, and stepped closer to the stones. The moment we crossed the threshold into the clearing, the air shifted, thickening with an otherworldly presence. Are you ready? I whispered, my voice barely audible above the rustling leaves. Ready as I'll ever be, Elena replied, her eyes bright with courage. We positioned ourselves before the altar we had constructed, its offerings shimmering in the moonlight. I felt a deep connection to the land, an understanding that this was not just about us. It was about honoring the spirits that had watched over Yellowstone for centuries. As we stood in silence, something began to stir around us. A low hum resonated from the stones, vibrating through the ground and into our feet. The air grew colder, and the wind picked up, swirling around us like a living entity. Suddenly, the ground beneath us trembled, and a deep, rumbling voice echoed through the clearing. Why have you come? The sound was both haunting and beautiful, reverberating in my chest. I glanced at Elena, whose face was a mixture of fear and awe. We seek to understand. I called out, my voice steady despite the rising tide of anxiety. We want to honor the spirits and learn from you. The wind howled in response, whipping around us with a ferocity that threatened to knock us off our feet. Shadows danced among the trees, twisting and contorting, and I could sense a presence emerging from the darkness. Shapes began to take form, figures cloaked in mist, their features indistinguishable but their essence palpable. They come to listen, the voice rumbled again, louder this time, echoing through the clearing. But are you prepared for the truth? With that, the figures coalesced into a more defined shape, a spirit, ethereal and shimmering, its eyes glowing like embers. I felt a shiver run down my spine, a combination of fear and reverence. We are, I responded, my heart racing. We are ready to hear what you have to say. The spirit gazed at us, a deep sadness reflected in its luminous eyes. Many have come before, seeking knowledge and power, but few have understood the balance that must be maintained between the natural world and the spirits that reside within it. What happened to Tom? Elena asked, her voice breaking the tense silence. Why did he disappear? The spirit's expression turned somber. Tom sought to understand our world without respecting the balance. He ventured too far into the depths of the forest, disturbing what should not be disturbed. The spirits became restless, and he was taken by the shadows. No, I gasped, a wave of sorrow washing over me. We didn't mean to disrespect the land. We only wanted to learn and protect it. Therein lies the truth, the spirit replied, its voice echoing in the stillness. Respect must guide your actions. You have shown honor today, and for that, you have been granted this audience. But understand that the path ahead is fraught with challenges. The balance has been tipped, and it is your duty to restore it. A chilling wind swept through the clearing, and I felt a surge of energy pulse around us. The shadows grew darker, swirling like a storm about to unleash its fury. I could sense the spirits around us, their restlessness palpable. We were on the precipice of something monumental, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on my shoulders. What can we do? I pleaded, desperation creeping into my voice. How can we help restore the balance? The spirit extended a translucent hand, and I felt an overwhelming sense of connection. You must gather the knowledge of the land and share it with others. The stories of the past must be told, the rituals honored. Only then can the spirits find peace. As the spirit spoke, images flashed before my eyes, visions of the land, its history, and the harmony that once existed between humans and nature. I could see the indigenous tribes performing rituals, honoring the land, and living in harmony with the spirits. The scenes were beautiful, but they quickly shifted to chaos, construction, destruction, and the erasure of traditions that had once thrived. The voice of the spirit echoed in my mind. You are the bridge between the past and the future. It is your responsibility to ensure that the stories are not forgotten. The shadows around us began to writhe, and I felt the urgency rise within me. We will do it, I promised, my voice fierce with determination. We will honor the land and its spirits. We will share the stories. Elena stepped forward, her eyes ablaze with conviction. Together, we will protect Yellowstone and its legacy. We will ensure that Tom's story is not in vain. The spirit regarded us with a mixture of pride and sorrow. Your journey is only beginning. The shadows will not easily relinquish their hold. Be vigilant, for they will test your resolve. With that, the air crackled, and the shadows coalesced into a swirling vortex that enveloped the clearing. The ground trembled beneath us, and I felt a powerful surge of energy. For a moment, it felt as if time stood still. Then, with a deafening roar, the vortex erupted, casting us backward. As the darkness began to fade, I grasped Elena's hand, pulling her close. We landed on the ground, breathless and disoriented, surrounded by the stones that had witnessed our confrontation. The clearing was eerily quiet, the spirits had vanished, but the air was charged with a lingering energy. We had faced the unknown, confronted the truth, and emerged transformed. Did that really happen? Elena whispered, her voice trembling with awe. I think it did, I replied, still trying to process the weight of our encounter. We have a responsibility now, one we can't ignore. As we stood in the clearing, the moon shining brightly above us, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but together, we would honor the land, the spirits, and the legacy of those who had come before us. We took one last look at the stones, knowing that our story was far from over. The true work was just beginning, and with it, the promise of hope and renewal. Together, we would strive to restore the balance, to be the stewards of Yellowstone and its ancient wisdom. In the weeks and months that followed our encounter at Whispering Pines, Elena and I dedicated ourselves to the mission we had accepted. We began organizing workshops and educational programs, inviting the community to participate in storytelling sessions that honored the rich history of Yellowstone and its indigenous cultures. It was a labor of love, but the response was overwhelming. People came together, eager to share their experiences and learn about the land's significance, the spirits that resided within it, and the importance of preserving the delicate balance between nature and humanity. As winter melted into spring, the forest began to awaken. New life burst forth from the thawing ground, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming wildflowers. We took this season as a symbol of hope and renewal, a reminder that the cycles of nature continued, even after darkness. The stories we shared resonated with the community, and together, we forged a renewed bond with the land. Our actions sparked a movement, one that reached beyond the borders of Yellowstone. Other parks began to take notice, adopting similar approaches to honor the spirits of their own lands. We realized that our journey was not just about Yellowstone. It was a call to action for all who sought to protect the earth and its treasures. However, the shadows were not gone. They lingered at the edges of our awareness, reminding us that vigilance was essential. We continued to patrol the park, listening to the whispers of the forest and sharing our knowledge with visitors. Each interaction became an opportunity to educate others about the importance of respect and harmony with the natural world. The legacy of Tom and the spirits of Whispering Pines lived on through our efforts. We honored his memory by ensuring that the stories of the past would not be forgotten. The spirits may have been restless, but we took solace in knowing that we were doing our part to restore the balance. As we stood at the edge of the park one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. We were no longer just rangers. We were stewards of the land, protectors of its stories and its spirits. The journey had transformed us, and with each passing day, we grew more dedicated to our cause. Years later, as I reflect on that fateful night at Whispering Pines, I realize how much our lives have changed. The park has become a beacon of preservation and respect, drawing visitors from around the world. Elena and I continue to share our story, not just as a tale of terror, but as a testament to the power of connection between people, nature, and the spirits that guide us. We have learned that honoring the past is essential for a harmonious future. Join us in protecting the natural world and honoring its history. Share your own stories and experiences with the lands you cherish, and educate others about the importance of respecting our environment. Together, we can create a movement that celebrates the beauty and wisdom of nature, ensuring that the spirits of the land are honored for generations to come. Let us be the stewards of our earth, working hand in hand to restore balance and preserve the stories that make our world so rich and vibrant.